Hello, welcome to The Exalted Programmer. My name is Alexander, and today we're talking about Bash. Bash is a very popular piece of software. It's decades old, has been refined through those years. It is used throughout the IT world, both on web servers and other web and internet devices. You can also find it on many other devices, like I have it running here on my Windows computer. I have it on my phone, but it's primarily known with its association with Linux. In fact, my Windows installation is technically called Bash on Ubuntu on Windows, but Microsoft does support it, and it is something you can get installed on your Windows system. I do hope I can do a series of videos on Bash and an even larger series of getting the most out of your computer. But I'm going to start today by trying to sell you on the idea of Bash. First, a lot of people get a little intimidated by looking at a blank screen where you input text and get responses back. There's also a idea that Bash gives you too much control, or you can do too much damage in a Bash shell. You can do too much damage to your computer in a number of ways. Bash could be abused, but there's a lot of safeguards that exist, and we'll even talk about creating one today to make it even safer. The first thing is that Bash is free. That is, it is open source and also free in that it doesn't cost any money. Anyone can pick it up and start using it on just about any device. But you also need motivation to jump into something new. The motivation is that you can easily go from running commands in Bash to scripting in Bash and automating in Bash and having things happen for you automatically on your schedule and how you design. Honestly, that pathway is pretty straightforward, but it's a little bit beyond the scope of this video today, but we will be doing a video in the future where you can just work out your process, dump it into a text file, and pretty simply just create a Bash script that can run on a schedule. Another great selling point for Bash, at least for me, is the fact that it makes it really easy for me to control multiple computers in multiple locations without having to get up and go to that physical location. In fact, I have computers that don't even have keyboards or monitors connected to them, but they still serve good functions, such as handling data backups or managing my podcast feeds. But before we can get into anything like that, we need to first familiarize ourselves with some of the more basic aspects of Bash. What we can see here is a Bash window on the left and a File Explorer window on the right, showing that I am indeed running this on Windows. And in both cases, we're looking at the same information. This folder is called example, and it contains two folders in a file. Over here, we're in the folder example, and it contains two folders in a file. I didn't set these up to be similar. They are the exact same folder, just looking at them in two different programs. I do want to add that almost every version of Bash I come across has certain settings already set to make things look nicer, work better, such as having a username and the directory here. If that's not what you're seeing, that's fine. We will cover this in a future video as well. In fact, this is not the default way this is set up on my computer, but I changed it for this video because it's rather easy to make these small little changes. So the first command that we want to use is the ls command, which is what I use to show these files and directories. And then you just type in the letters L and S and you hit enter, and there you go. If we want to go into a directory in our File Explorer, you can double click the folder to get into it, but we can change directories using CD and just give it the name, which in this case is folder _1. If we ls, we can see the test documentation there. To open it up on the File Explorer, you do double click again. With Bash though, there is a number of programs that we can use to open up this file, and it's up to you to decide which one you like most. I kept the file pretty short, so we can use the cat command and give it the file, and we can see what's inside the file. Hello YouTube. If we open it up here, we can see Hello YouTube. Again, same exact thing. We can clear our screen with clear, and then we can go up a directory here. To do that, we need to look at a little bit more with the ls directory. If we do ls-a, it will list all things, including hidden files. The only thing that's hidden is this dot directory and this two dot directory. This dot directory is just a link in every folder that points to itself, and the two dots is a link in every folder that points to the directory above it in our directory tree. So if I do cd, so change directories, and I hit ... that says, hey, go up to the previous directory. And here we are. We're back into the example directory. Right now, it might seem like this takes a lot more work with the keyboard than with the mouse, which I would say if you're used to using the keyboard, you can go a lot faster with it than the mouse, and you don't have to move your arms nearly as much if you keep your fingers on the correct home row keys if you took typing class. You might be wondering why folder 2 is in quotation marks and why there's a backslash here. That's because Bash does use spaces to determine when one command is done. And so if I try to go to folder 2, it would first try to change into folder here. And I'm not 100% sure what the 2 is going to do because it's going to cause problems. For it to know that we want to go into this, but it also contains a white space, we could use the quotation marks, or we can use the backslash, which is what I tend to use. You do get options with Bash. You can do things in multiple ways. That might be a little confusing, but once you figure out the way you prefer, that's the way you're going to do it, and you'll just be used to doing it that way. Now, I did say Bash is an old program, and it relies on other programs that are even older, like the ls command. I think is older. I might be wrong on that. But there's a lot of two-letter commands because a long time ago, there just wasn't a lot of programs. So if we want to, let's say, copy a file, we can do cp for copy, give it the file name, and tell it where we want it to go. In this case, I'm going to send it to folder 2. Now, if we ls here, there's one here, but as you saw in the viewfinder in the folder 2, there now is one in folder 2. And there we go. Also worth pointing out is that you don't have to go into a directory to see what's inside of a directory. We can actually ls and give it a directory name to see what's inside that directory without changing directories. Maybe we don't want to copy the file. Maybe we want to move the file. Well, we could copy the original file and then delete it, or we can just use the mv for move command, where again, we give it the file we want to move and where we want to send it. And now it doesn't exist here, but it does exist in folder 1 with our test document. One more two-letter command that I group with copy and move is the remove key, that is to delete something. We now know we have 2 copies of my file. That seems a bit excessive. So we can rm for remove my file. And then it just deletes it. It no longer exists. If that seems a bit too sudden for you, we can also give these commands arguments. This is something that's common for most of the programs that we use in Bash. Arguments and flags. And for remove, we can give it the -i flag. And then when we give it a file, we've already deleted my file, but if we wanted to go remove test documentation as well, the -i will ask us before we remove our file. So if we did something that would remove a lot of files, it would ask us for each one if we want to delete it or not. And then we could hit N for no. In a future video, maybe the next video, we'll find a way of making this even safer. If you do want to know ever what is available for any program, there are the manual pages that come inside of Bash, almost guaranteed. I'm sure there's versions out there, some operating systems that don't pull the manual pages, but you can get it with the man command and the command you want the manual pages for. So if I do man rm, I now have the documentation for rm. Now, like I said, there's a lot of ways of doing things in Bash that are similar, but maybe slightly different. And there's a ton of websites out there that you can look up and find all sorts of neat little tricks that can be done. Like I can show all my files in directories using the tree command. And there we see a more thorough look into our directories. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is the creation of files. We've talked about how to move, copy, and delete. But what happens if you want to make a directory? Well, you can do mkdir for make directory, and we can make a folder 3. The purpose of this video is not to give an overview look at Bash or Linux, just to make the command line seem a little bit easier to approach. It is worth pointing out that there are other shells out there, but Bash is pretty popular. I think the manual pages are totally worth it alone to use Bash, even with the extra typing, if that's how you go about doing things. But ultimately, we're going to get to a point where not only are we typing less, we're not typing at all. There will be future videos in this series, as I have a ton of commands that I would like to go through. If you cannot wait for the next video, feel free to search online. There's a lot of websites that cover these things. And anytime you do use these commands, even if you're using them in a way you understand, in a way you want, I would suggest look at the manual pages, because you might be surprised what else you could do with the programs you're already using. If you have any questions about this topic or Linux or technology in general, feel free to ask questions in the comments below. And thank you for watching.